Welcome to the Comic Sauce Podcast, where we talk comics and comics culture. I am Henry Liu, and today I am joined by Porfirio Rangel. Porfirio, how are you doing?
Doing really well, Henry. It's hot down here in SoCal, but happy to be here.
Nice hot summer. Pretty warm up here in the Bay Area too. Probably nowhere near as hot as where you're at. But we are joined by Christian Diadamo. Christian, how are you?
How's it going? I'm doing well. Ready to talk some Thor.
All right. Indeed. Today is July 15th, 2022, and we're going to talk about Thor, Love and Thunder, the latest movie release from Marvel Studios. So the three of us went to go see this movie just recently, a week ago tonight, opening Friday. And we definitely have thoughts, certainly. Um, but before we get into all the spoilery stuff, let's do what we often do, and that's talk a little bit about expectations. So, curious from you guys, what were your expectations for this movie? How were you feeling when you went into the theater and sat down and got ready to check this one out? You want to start, Porfirio?
Yeah, sure. So for me, I kind of had actually, to be honest, zero excitement or
Hmm.
expectations for this movie. Like compared to the last MCU releases, um, like Spider-Man No Way Home and Doctor Strange 2, I guess I was way more excited, especially for the ticket releases on Fandango. I was really on top of it, and then for Thor, I was just kind of like, "Oh yeah, that movie's coming out. I should probably get the tickets for us." And I think just because there was no hype for the movie because the trailer didn't come out till 2 months prior to the release date. And yeah, I guess the Thor franchise has either been a major hit or miss. Thor 3 I was a big huge fan of, and then the other two were okay. And this one, even though it was going to be helmed by Taiki Watiki again, um I was like, okay, it's in good hands because he's a really good director. He's a great contact um creator. But after watching the first trailer release, it just seemed like a Thor 3 remake or a James Gunn parody of one of their works and stuff. So I was just like, okay, is anything new gonna be used with this movie? But nothing that excited me or wowed me. So um yeah, I just had zero expectations, or the bar just kind of low for me with this movie.
Gotcha. What about you, Christian?
I was actually kind of the opposite of Porfirio. I was really looking forward to this one. Um, I really like Taika Waititi as a director and writer. Like, he's always got a lot of charm to his work, and I've always really liked his movies in the past. I really loved Thor Ragnarok. I think that's one of my favorite MCU movies, as well as Jojo Rabbit's really great. What We Do in the Shadows, Eagle versus Shark, some of his more indie pictures. Um, but all of them is great, and I think Thor Ragnarok was so fresh, so funny, and so much fun to watch, especially at the time when it came out, that I was really excited for this. I thought it was a great step for the character of Thor. Um, I haven't seen Thor 1 and 2 in a long time. Thor 2 I really didn't like. Thor 1 I liked at the time, but I haven't seen that in years. I don't know how I feel about it anymore. And so I thought it was a great like boost for the character, and I was really excited to see where they took this next. And then I wanted to see Taika Waititi's kind of like take on Jane Foster and the Mighty Thor, who I thought was very underutilized in Thor 1 and 2 before she just kind of dipped entirely from the MCU. And also I really like Guns N' Roses, and I really kind of enjoyed like the vibe of the trailers. I was playing Sweet Child of Mine, and the way they did the lettering and how it looked really 80s. Like everything kind of had this like 80s metal album cover vibe to it. So yeah, I was looking forward to this one.
Yeah, Christian, I'm with you. Like I was going in with pretty high expectations too. Like for a lot of the same reasons. Like uh Taika Waititi's past work has been great. Yeah, like I've seen some of his old stuff too. Oh, not old stuff, his previous stuff. Jojo Rabbit and what was it called? Hunt for the Wilder People. Those were great. Thor Ragnarok, awesome. I also saw this show called What We Do in the, or no, you mentioned that. You mentioned What We Do in the Shadows, but the show he did called Our Flag Means Death, which he was heavily involved in, and that's a lot of fun. So I was definitely riding pretty high on Taika. So I was figuring that this would be great, you know. um I I kind of feel like I went in with a similar feel as I did going into Wonder Woman 1984, because it was like, well, how could this go wrong? Because you had the same lead actor, you got the same director, the previous movie was awesome. So why wouldn't this be awesome also, right? So yeah, I was totally looking forward to it. And I would add too that I'm a big fan of the Guardians of the Galaxy, and I knew they were in this movie, so even more reason to get hyped, you know? Okay, so that was the expectation. What was the reality? So let's get into it. Let's
Well,
give the spoiler alert
what
and get into it. Real quick, Porfirio, you had something?
I was just gonna like ask a question before we get into spoiler territory, but did you guys have any like predictions going into it, like based off like the trailer of what you've heard? Because like the trailer showed that like yeah like Jane Foster was taking up the hammer and being reintroduced in the MCU, and Christian Bale was gonna be introduced in the MCU with his character. What's it called? Gorg?
Gore, the
Gore.
Yep.
the God Butcher.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. What was your guys' like predictions or yeah, like expectations when it came down to the trailers, or yeah, like just those details and stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question, because like with past movies, I think Spider-Man No Way Home in particular, I had so many questions. I went in with like a whole laundry list of like, oh, is this character going to show up? Is this going to happen? Is that going to happen? I was just like, I mean, we talked about having like a bingo card and stuff, but I had like so much going on in my brain. With this movie, like nothing. I was looking forward to it, but I was just like, I wasn't totally interested in any kind of speculation. I was just like going in there and like, let's have fun. Like, this is going to be a fun comedy. And it was kind of freeing, actually. I was like, yeah, like I'm just here to have fun. I'm not here to like stress out about, oh, I wonder if this character is going to show up or is this going to happen. None of that, and there's no speculation. So it's a very different experience going in compared to past Marvel movies, particularly No Way Home.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. I definitely felt like pretty much the same way. I'd say my only prediction, which seems like I guess at the time felt like a slam dunk idea, was that, oh, this is the introduction of the new Thor. This is the introduction of Jane Foster, and this is going to be where Thor Odinson rides off into the sunset.
Mm.
I think we've been having a lot of that with previous Marvel properties, Hawkeye, of the uh, previous member of the Avengers, the legacy character, passing the torch to a new generation. And this was Thor's version of that. So that's my big prediction. That's that was really it, actually. Other than that, I would say I was very pretty open to whatever was in store.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was certainly curious about some things. Yeah, in particular, the Jane Foster character. But mostly it was just sit back and enjoy kind of vibe, right? Okay, let's pause for a second. Let's figure out what happened to Porfirio here. It's like, but yeah, what about you, Porfirio? Did you have any thoughts going into the movie on that?
Yeah, like so you guys already said, I thought Jane Foster, um like this was gonna be like a passed down mantle from Chris Hemsworth's Thor to Jane Foster's Thor, and just kind of like, create like this whole like new Avengers team for the future, because we already saw that with like Hawkeye and Captain America, and so I just figured like, oh, like it makes sense that Thor will fit that formula. So that happened, and I was really excited to see Christian Bale's villain, Gorg, because yeah, just reading off how powerful he is in the comics, I was like, oh, this sounds like I guess like MCU's version of like uh Dark Sidious or Voldemort, or like that sinister kind of character who is like very mysterious and has like this like agenda of like kill the gods, like you know like with a very like old mystical voice. But yeah, so those are like two of my biggest like expectations or predictions that I thought was going to happen.
Gotcha. So yeah, it sounds like you had a similar mindset as me. Like you weren't super excited about the movie, but you're definitely curious about, you know, some of the characters and what was going to happen, right? So
Hmm.
okay, so back to it. We had some expectations, some lack of expectations, but what was the reality? We saw the movie, and let's start with the positives. What was good? What did you like about Thor: Love and Thunder? You want to kick us off here, Christian?
Yeah. So actually, since Porfirio just mentioned Gore, I do want to say Gore is one of the biggest positives of the movie. Christian Bale as Gore. I think he's great. He does actually remind me a lot of Voldemort, the way he looks, the way he's like pale white, and he plays a good villain. He knows how to be really creepy. I think he always has a lot of presence when he's there. Um, there's there's scenes or shots where it's all completely dark and you see his red eyes appear as he like walks into the frame, and I enjoyed like how he had his sword that he stabs into the ground and shadow monsters appear. And I think as a whole, I think Marvel's been stepping up their villain game with these past few movies, with No Way Home, Shang-Chi, and Doctor Strange, and I think this one is like keeping that trend going, which is a trend that I really like, and I think is a very positive direction for the MCU. More villains, better villains. So, what do you guys think of Gore?
What do you think, Porfirio?
I like I said, I had really cool expectations for Gore. I agree with everything you said, Christian. I thought it was really cool. His the aesthetic, the makeup, and everything. I don't know if you guys know this, but there was like this interview Taiki did where there was some concept art where they had like this idea of having having like Christian Bale like have not have a nose, but then he was just like, oh, that's gonna look way too much like Voldemort.
Yeah.
um so that was a little fun fact. And he was creepy. He was definitely had that like creepy vibe. Yeah. Um, mysterious character. I thought he was like a worthy villain against Thor. And the way, yeah, he was able to like keep stand his ground against like Thor, Jane Foster, and Valkyrie. Um, that's what I'll say, yeah, about him so far for the positive side.
Cool. Yeah. I did think he looked pretty cool. Like he had a menacing look. The character design was on point. And yeah, bottom line is he looked pretty scary. And there was definitely some Voldemort vibes for sure. Um, so yeah, aesthetically, I was down. I thought he worked uh in that respect. In terms of a character development, that sort of thing. Um, I think to no fault of Christian Bale, like he's basically good in everything he does. Um, I think my problems with the character are just kind of more of my problem with the whole movie, and I'll get into it more when we start talking about negatives. But um, yeah, I thought the movie just was lacking in character development in general. So um, yeah, I'll talk about it more.
We'll save that for the negatives.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know we're itching to get there, but for now,
Uh-huh.
I say he looked cool. He did look cool.
Uh-huh.
Leave it at that for now.
Yeah. And a positive I would give is I was really excited to see Valkyrie. I feel like, she was introduced in Thor Ragnarok, which she was really great in. And then I felt like there was like just shortcomings of her in Endgame. So I was excited to see more of her. Um, and like the opening scenes of her being more of like a political figure, being king of Asgard, I thought was kind of funny because Valkyrie's like she's a warrior. I feel like for her, she's just kind of like she would have been like, screw these politics, like let me go back on the battlefield and whatever. Um, so I was excited to see more of her. I was definitely excited to see Lady Sif again back in um the MCU because we haven't seen her since I think Thor 2, right?
I
I
Yeah.
don't
believe you're right.
remember.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I guess technically we saw her in Loki, but her last movie was Thor: The Dark
Thir-
World. Yeah.
yeah, because yeah, she wasn't even in like Infinity War or Endgame, I don't
Hmm.
think.
Or
Um,
Ragnarok.
yeah, or Ragnarok. So I was
Yeah.
excited to see her again. Um, but let me try to think of another positive to the movie. The soundtrack was cool, and seeing the Zeus Russell Crowe's Zeus. Wait, is it Russell Crowe or
Yeah. Yeah. Russell Crowe as
okay?
Zeus. Yep.
Sorry, I always get Russell Crowe and Jared Butler confused.
He did
But
have an accent, the movie, so he did have a Greek accent, so it may have been a little tough to to pick out who he was.
but I was excited to see like that whole like concept of like the gods, because like the MCU's already tackled that. We just finished watching Moon Knight, so we saw like what's the Egyptian god?
Oh,
Uh,
Ahmet and Khonshu.
Yeah, Conchu and Omelet, and then um yeah, and then seeing like Eternals and stuff, talking about like, because there's like this like major line, I guess, that was like spoken in Eternals. I think Spike said how like a lot of Earth's gods are based off the Eternals. So it was just interesting to see like like how gods or like higher beings are being placed within the MCU, you know, based on like people's religion or whatever. Um so I really enjoyed that scene. I wish there was more exploration around it, but I really kind of did like that whole like kind of, yeah, like explanation to like how there's other gods exist within the MCU, like the Greek gods like Zeus and celestial beings and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I thought that was cool.
cool. So let's see. I guess I have a few other positives to note here. Yeah, ultimately for me, I did have some problems with the movie overall. Again, we'll get into them, but for now, just wanted to mention that there are definitely moments in the movie that are enjoyable. There's a lot of comedy in the movie, kind of hit or miss, but yeah, definitely hit at some moments. There's a great cameo, again, spoiler alert, but the great comedic actress Melissa McCarthy does a cameo as Hella in a play, and it's just really funny. I definitely laughed in that moment, um, and I definitely laughed in another moment. There was a relationship montage of Thor and Jane. I thought that was really funny. That was like really well done. There's one part where Mjolnir is dragging Thor and Jane on rollerblades. Really good stuff. So definitely funny there. Um, so yeah, there were definitely some moments that were worthwhile. We mentioned past characters showing up like Sif and Valkyrie. Darcy shows up too, and we haven't seen Darcy in a Thor movie since Dark World. Also, actually, was she even in Dark World?
She
Yeah, she
was.
She
was.
was. Okay, right.
She had her own intern.
That's right. That's right. And we did see her in WandaVision, right?
Yep.
But she's always great, and I thought she was really good in the one scene she was in this movie. So yeah, that was a pleasant surprise, definitely. Okay. Anything else we want to call out as positives for this movie?
Yeah, I got one thing. I fully agree with the positives that you guys all mentioned. And I think one other aspect I really liked about this movie is I like the sense of color in this movie. I enjoyed the color palette. I liked how bright and vibrant the omnipotent city was when you see all the gods, as well as when in the scene after where they go to that like moon type planet and they go to the Shadow Realm and everything's black and white. I thought was a really cool little set piece right there. And yeah, like the way like the way they use kind of like the black and white of like gore mixed with like the ultra vibrant world of like Thor, and the way they kind of like it kind of meshes between them, like comedic and serious in a sense.
Hmm.
So that's just another thing that I liked about the movie.
I agree. I like the whole like color scheme to it. Was there, because there was color in the Shadow Realm, wasn't there? Like a little bit.
There was when Jane Foster kind of lit Mjolnir like a little flashlight. You saw little bits of color, and that was
Hmm.
a like really cool little thing that they had there.
Yeah. Was there? Because did you was there any like significance to it, or just like a thing like, oh, like just the light gave it color?
I think that might have been all it was. You know, the light gave it color because I think
Okay.
the thunderbolt also gave off some like color as well.
Okay. Um. Okay. Yeah. For me, another big positive, I guess, was just like, because we talked about like expectations or predictions. Was seeing Jane Foster as Thor. Like again, like this is me just thinking that she's taking up the mantle and stuff. And like when back in, just like in the comics, when it was revealed that Jane Foster was the one, like the new Thor, like I just remember like there's just a lot of, like, that that was the time when like Marvel comics was just taking up a change, and people were just like, oh, like screw this like social justice progressive liberal stuff, and I just thought that was hilarious, and seeing this again, like if you're like a Marvel reader, you already know that she's Thor in the comics, so it's no surprise that she's gonna they're go- it was eventually going to happen where she was going to be reintroduced in the MCU as carrying the hammer. And so like when like people were upset about it, like that's not my Thor or whatever, I was just like, I thought that was comedic as fuck. And so I was pretty excited to see like seeing her come back and kind of kick ass. And um yeah, that I thought that was cool.
Hmm.
Right on.
Yeah, I do think she has like um like a much better arc here than I think what we've seen before. Like
Hmm.
I much preferred seeing her in this movie than I think I did in Thor 1 and 2. And I thought it was cool how she had like the hammer ability where the hammer broke apart and you saw the shards like fly out and hit a bunch, hit a bunch of monsters at once. As like her signature move.
Indeed. Okay, so I think we can move on to some of the negatives.
Dun dun dun.
Yeah. So, what didn't you like about this movie?
You want to start us off, Henry?
Sure. Since we've been talking about Jane Foster quite a bit, maybe I'll just kind of continue that, but maybe on the more negative side. So, we have been talking about how the Gore character looks pretty cool. Um, I kind of thought besides Gore, no one else looked cool. um, I didn't think the Jane Foster Thor looked cool at all. Now, when I first saw her revealed in the trailer, I was already kind of like, whoa, that's what she looks like. She had like the helmet on, and it was very like comics accurate, but I was like, dang, that looks kind of corny. But it's just a trailer. So, let me see the movie. But that is basically how she looks throughout the movie. And it's pretty cartoonish. And yeah, just aesthetically, I don't know. I had some problems with that look. And it probably didn't help too that here's a surprising part for me. Surprisingly, I found the Jane Foster character completely uninteresting, which was weird because I liked her quite a bit in the first Thor movie. Um, and it's odd because in that movie, she was kind of the um, like the relatable character. Like she's um, this person who meets this like really charismatic, kind of quirky, muscular guy, right? And Thor is the unrelatable one. Like he's this stranger in a strange land. But Jane Foster is who like we see the story unfold through her eyes, right? So I don't know why, but in this movie, she's not like that. She's kind of like this wild card character who's saying like some pretty wild stuff. Very, she does things that are like totally for comedic purposes, and doesn't seem to be grounded in much of any kind of reality. I don't know. So yeah, I mean, I'm still kind of processing a lot of this stuff, but yeah, like the look didn't work for me. I found the character uninteresting. And then on top of all that, I'm curious about your guys' take on this part, but they throw in this real kind of real bummer of a storyline where she has cancer, right? And it seemed to be really at odds with the tone of the movie. The tone of the movie is like completely uh, comedic and just goofy comedy, right? Um, but she has stage 4 cancer in this movie, and it is like a big part of the like the serious drama of the movie is basically this cancer storyline with Jane. And it kind of weirded me out. Like I don't know, it kind of felt like a big wet blanket over everything. Just yeah, I know, Christian, you mentioned there's this kind of interesting juxtaposition of like some serious stuff with the comedy. We talked about gore a bit. There's that there also, but this one really weirded me out. Like the whole cancer thing, that vibe really threw me for a loop. So yeah, maybe I'll throw it back to you guys. What did you guys think of the cancer storyline?
Well, I mean, just off the back, like it didn't come out of nowhere because that's what actually like it happened in the comics. Like that's how she becomes Thor. Because she has breast cancer in the comics, and then like she picks up the hammer, and then like that's kind of like the uh not to say like antidote to like her breast cancer within the comics, but because like that's also the same thing that's like stopping her from recovering. Um, but uh, I just want to just like put that out that it's just like it's off the comics like material.
Oh, good call. Good call. Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. That is cool that it is faithful to the comics, but I don't know. Maybe it could have been handled in a better way. I don't know. Any thoughts there, either of you?
Yeah, like I see what you mean. How it can feel like kind of jarring, the like the big tonal shifts of I guess the movie in general does kind of have that problem where it does feel a bit jarring the way it kind of flips between like something as serious as cancer, and then she's picking up the hammer and she's trying to make corny one-liners, and like her whole thing is I need a catchphrase.
Yeah.
And it was kind of this running joke of her character that she was like trying to do that I don't think really worked. And like I think cancer is something that is always, it's very serious, it's very real, and it affects a lot of people. And so like having something I think like super jokey in a Thor movie, it does feel like it does throw it off a bit, you know. Whereas we never really dealt with anything like that in like Ragnarok. Ragnarok was a much more like adventurous, grand storyline,
Mhm.
rather than something that was about someone battling with cancer and another character battling with the death of his daughter. And so I definitely I definitely see where you're getting at there, and I do agree. And while I think that it feels like she has more to do, it in a way it does feel like the idea and her character was a bit underdeveloped, as I think we're probably going to get in for more of these characters down the line. So yeah,
Yeah.
I see what you mean.
But yeah, maybe continuing that thought, the Jane Foster character wasn't the only character I thought was kind of lacking in character development. I kind of didn't care about any of the characters in this movie. You know, I mean, for me, bottom line is I didn't care about the characters. I didn't care about the story. Man, I just didn't care much about anything, you know? So, and and even that said, I could have been okay with this movie if I had laughed more, right? So,
Hmm.
this movie, very much like Thor Ragnarok, is a straight up comedy. There are some dramatic elements, there are certainly action elements. But I remember when Thor Ragnarok first came out, a lot of us were saying, like, whoa, man, they just made a straight up Marvel comedy. This is a comedy movie. If blockbusters were still open, they would put it in the comedy section. They wouldn't put it in action or drama or whatever. It would belong in the comedy section, right? They did the same thing here. This is a comedy movie, bottom line, right? So without decent storylines and um, without good character development, it could have been redeemable, I think, if it was a funny movie. Like it could have been a great movie if like we really cared about the characters and it was hilarious. But yeah, those aspects, the story and the characters, didn't really work for me. So was it funny? That's the big question. Was this movie funny, right? And if you were to tell me that Taika Waititi is making a follow-up comedy to Ragnarok, I'd be like, that's a slam dunk. This is going to be a funny movie, right? And as I mentioned, I think there are some fun moments in this movie. Um, but it's almost like you could take like a few clips. You could take a YouTube clip of that play where Melissa McCarthy shows up as Hela. You can make a little YouTube clip of the Jane and Thor relationship montage. But as a 2-hour movie, no, it. I simply did not laugh that much during this movie, and yeah. I mean, like the one sentence review for me of this movie is that it's a comedy movie with few laughs, period.
Ooh,
I just didn't laugh.
ouch.
I just did not laugh that much at all, and I have seen it twice. So the first time I was like, man, like I wasn't like, what just happened? I don't know. Was I just tripping or what? So the second time I was kind of like paying attention, like, let me just focus here. And same thing. I just was not laughing that much. A lot of the jokes just did not hit. They're really corny. They were really a lot of the jokes were on a very low maturity level, I think. Um yeah, there's a lot of corny jokes in this movie. A lot of them did not work. What did you guys think? How funny was the movie to you all?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
they yeah, for me there's definitely like yeah, like a few punchlines like you said. Melissa McCarthy's scene was hilarious. But like I just felt like there's just like this like formula that Taiki like copied from like Thor Ragnarok. And I think why it worked for Thor Ragnarok was just because it was so fresh. We didn't expect that from like a Thor movie. Like we probably would have expected it from like Guardians of the Galaxy or like Deadpool or whatever, but from a Thor movie, that would have been fresh, you know? That was fresh and new and unexpected. But for this movie, it's kind of like that one meme where it says like, "Oh, can I copy your homework?" Sure, just but don't like copy it too much to make it seem like we cheated. And I feel like that's exactly what happened here. Like there was just too much like of that same formula that was used in Thor Ragnarok, just different kind of scenarios. And um yeah, there was just like a bunch of stuff that did not click or overused or it was kind of like forced to us, like the whole the screaming goats, you know, like
Oh yeah.
Oh God.
yeah, like I feel like a few times it's funny because it's like like the people who are giving them to Thor, they're like, I don't want them anymore, and just like they're annoying as fuck. Like that's why it's funny because they want to get rid of them and give them to Thor, you know. But then I feel like there's probably like this big like behind the scenes Marvel mindset where they just thought like this is gonna be funny. Kids are gonna love this. This is gonna be a big like merch sell, like Baby Yoda or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
And and I think we talked about that day when we went to go watch it, but like later on during that night, like yeah, like it was like one of the first things that popped up onto my like social media thing, like Disney store, like the goats were there and stuff as like toys, and I was
Mm,
like, oh god, yeah, here it
boy.
is, like the merch, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like I just thought the comedy was too much. Yeah, like how basically what you said, Henry, a comedy movie with very few laughs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Christian, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's definitely problems with like I think like too many recurring jokes that may be kind of funny the first time, but they repeat themselves and they get way less funny. The goats is one. I thought another one was Mjolnir and Stormbreaker.
Oh my
Like
gosh.
the relationship of like
Huh.
Thor,
Mm,
my ex hammer, and oh no, I'm with you, Stormbreaker. Like I thought the first time when like Stormbreaker kind of slowly comes on screen, it gave me a laugh when he's trying to call Mjolnir.
yeah.
But like then the part like later on where he's like he pours beer over Stormbreaker, I was like, oh god, that was bad. And like things like that, and it feels like it just keeps going, and it always and so when the serious scenes kick in, it feels more jarring than it should. It doesn't. It feels like it because it's always undercut with a joke at some point. It just it like well, I said the colors kind of with the dark and serious helped mesh it. Like the writing and the comedy really didn't, like it just it felt like it caused more problems with it because it just wasn't very funny and it kept coming. They kept hitting you with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely agree. Yeah. I'm glad you brought up the goats, Porfirio, because I kind of forgot about the goats. Um, man, that was terrible. I remember first seeing this viral video about screaming goats. I mentioned how parts of this movie kind of work as YouTube clips. Well, I became aware of screaming goats through YouTube, like, I don't know, a couple years ago or something. And I legit thought it was funny at the time. I laughed. And then they brought those goats into this movie. And the first time it happened, I kind of chuckled, like, oh yeah, those are those goats I saw on YouTube, right? They scream. It's so weird. It's so wacky. But even then, even that first time, I don't think I laughed as hard as when I saw it like on YouTube. I just kind of chuckled. And then they did it again and I didn't laugh. And then they did it again and again and again. And each time it just got more and more annoying. And it was like, oh God, please kill me now. I don't want this anymore, you know? Oh man. One last note on the comedy. I definitely wanted to call this out. So the Guardians of the Galaxy are in this movie. And a lot of people, myself included, were looking forward to Thor plus the Guardians. We got a taste of it at the end of Avengers Endgame. It seemed like a great like comedy team, right? And the Guardians of the Galaxy are some of the funniest characters in all of the MCU. The two Guardians of the Galaxy movies we've gotten from James Gunn are hilarious. These characters are legit funny when they're together. They're super funny. Even out of the hands of James Gunn, they're super funny. Like in Infinity War, they are hilarious, you know? So I was like, oh shit, the Guardians of the Galaxy are being given to Taika Waititi. This is gonna be fucking awesome, right? This is gonna be super funny. But in this movie, the Guardians are criminally underutilized. Oh my God, they might as well have not been in this movie. They weren't funny. They kind of had nothing to do with anything in this movie. It was almost like Taika didn't want them in the movie and he was like forced to use them because of the end of Endgame, right? That's what it kind of felt like. And it bummed me out, man. I was like, dude, this is criminal what has happened here, because this should have been great. But as it was a total waste. And yeah, it's just really unfortunate and really disappointing.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. Oh, go ahead, Porfirio.
No, you can go first because I feel like I'm gonna go on a long tangent.
Oh, okay, then I'll keep it brief. Yeah, the Guardians, like, they felt like they were shooed away after their like initial scene,
Yep.
which I thought was pretty annoying. Like, they didn't come back at all. Like, I'm creating a team, but you're not going to use any members from the team you just had. I thought that was they really should have come back for the third act or something and helped out. And so, yeah, I was super disappointed with that too.
Okay, what
Yeah.
about you, Porfirio?
Yeah, I think like, you mentioned this earlier, Henry. I just felt like there was just a lot of like shortcomings with a lot of stuff like, like Guardians of the Galaxy was one of them, but like, in the positive side, I mentioned how like I was happy to see like Lady Sif and Valkyrie and Gorg. But like at the same time, like that was also negative just because I felt like all of them were underutilized and there was just no character development. I was excited to see them, but by the end of the movie, I didn't care about them. You know,
Yep.
like like Valkyrie, she like was in it, and I feel like she didn't get like a proper kind of storyline. Um, Gorg, like he was badass in terms of visuals, but like I felt like most of the movie he was kind of just getting his ass kicked by Thor, and like he was supposed to be a god killer. Like where is he actually killing gods? Like or fighting them? Like there was none of that. Then yeah, there was no use of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Like they were just kind of like as quickly as they were put together, they were disbanded with Thor. Like there was just a lot of shortcomings with pretty much every character. Jane Foster, Thor, Korg, Zeus. Like they were just like it was hard to root for any character because there was just like no character development for any character.
Yeah, that's a good summary. It was hard to care about pretty much anything in this movie, right? Oh, hey, that you brought up a good point too about how, Gore looked cool, but he wasn't that imposing. Like the first time Gore battles the heroes in this movie, he loses, right?
Hmm.
He does kidnap the kids of Asgard, but he fights Thor and Jane and Valkyrie, and he kind of gets his ass kicked. And he's like, "Oh, I'm not beating these guys. I'm gonna get out of here. I'm just gonna kidnap these kids and leave." Right? It's kind of a no-no of action movies, right? You got to make your villain a little more
Menacing.
imposing, right? Menacing. Like
Yeah.
like compare Gore mid-movie to like Hela in
Yeah.
Ragnarok.
Yeah.
Hela was
Hmm.
like, whoa, how the fuck are they gonna beat this person? She's like amazing. She's invincible, right? Um, and in the end, they still couldn't beat her. They had to kind of turn the tide and get Ragnarok started to take her out, right? Um, but yeah, that in this movie, it was like, oh, they beat him the first time they met him, right? And yeah, later in like on his home turf, right, the Shadow Realm or whatever, he's more powerful there. But I never got a sense that he was like this all powerful villain, and I
Like
was
he
wondering.
like he was like a threat or anything.
Yeah, exactly. He wasn't a huge threat to the heroes of this movie.
Yeah, like kind of like what you said, like how they gave Hela like a good scene when she kind of like single-handedly destroys like the Asgardian army. I think it would have been cool to just have like a small scene where it's like three three or four gods like team up and they're like, "Oh, we heard you're the god killer. Like, how powerful are you?" Then they like fight him, and
Mm,
Gore kind of just like kills him off. Like, obviously he has like maybe like a little bit of like they put up a fight, but at the end, like Gore like finishes him off.
yeah,
Because like Thor is the one who's like selling to all the gods that Gork is a god killer, but you never see him kill any
right.
of them.
Yeah, that's a good point. We did see the aftermath of one of those
Yeah.
battles where Sif is like wounded, right? Maybe it would have been good to see that scene play out, right? Gore
Mm,
taking on gods and just like disposing
yeah.
disposing
Yeah.
of them
Just
easily.
just to kind of give like I guess some like credibility to like how powerful he is or whatever.
Yeah, totally. All right. Anything else we want to call out as negatives or things you didn't like so much here?
Hmm. I guess like another part. This is more, I guess, more of continuing on what we've been saying. But this movie is really like a structural mess
Yeah.
of a movie, and I've heard that there's like a lot of this movie got cut out. There's all Lena Headey is getting sued right now over a scene that she did that got cut out of the movie. And I've also heard Peter Dinklage was in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Odin was in the movie at one point, and like,
I think what's his name? The Grandmaster.
yeah,
Okay.
oh yeah, another like someone else too. Like, it seems like so much of this movie is missing. Like
Mm,
it's like you were talking about Gore not killing any gods that we see, except for that one at the beginning. There's a lot of character development lacking. It seems like scenes like come and go way too quickly for us, and like, by the time the big third act battle happens, we're kind of just like, oh, that's it, you know? And the movie's so underwhelming and rushed. And it kind of makes you wonder like what happened? Like how did like with like I don't know when this filmed with the pandemic and what the timeline was, but it seems like where did the time go? How did something how did this happen that this was this rushed and that there was such a time crunch to finish?
Yeah.
yeah, you bring up some interesting thoughts, Christian, because I haven't heard of any troubles with the production of this movie, but it feels like there were some problems here, right? It definitely feels like maybe there were some problems between the studios and Taika's direction. Um, yeah, like the whole thing with the Guardians, it really feels like he didn't want them in the movie, but was forced to do it. And that's just like one thing of a lot of things that felt kind of weird and off. So over time, might be worth like keeping an eye on this, because I have a feeling we might be hearing some stuff about like some clashing on creative decisions and that sort of thing.
You, it's so funny. Like, I don't know if, like, yeah, like I definitely did read that news also, Christian. Like, so many characters that were cut off or anything. Um, and I don't know like how much Marvel is like making Taiki say this, but uh, after the movie was made, I guess like I was some critiques that like it just felt cutted, like edited out, and so they were. I know there's been multiple like interviews where they've asked like Taiki like if he's gonna like do if there should be like release like a director's cut like with the Snyder cut, and he swears that there isn't like another version, that this is like the version he wanted and whatever. Like,
Interesting.
Mhm.
uh, uh but that's all you could say on that end.
Time will tell.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah, it just feels like something doesn't add up here. But
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
yeah, we'll see. We'll see over time if we hear anything. Okay, I think we could go on and on with the negatives on this one. But let's move on. Um, we did get a couple post-credit scenes. Let's talk about that a little bit. So, in the first post-credit scene, we are introduced to Hercules. What did you guys think of Hercules entering the MCU?
My thought was that it was like, oh, is this gonna be like another Adam Warlock situation where we heard about Adam Warlock coming into the MCU at the end of Guardians 2, and that was several years ago, and we haven't heard anything since.
Yeah.
So he might be in Guardians 3 coming out soon, but it's like, oh, we that might be the next Thor movie, which we might get in 5 years. So I
Mm-hmm.
guess we'll see.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, I think Adam Warlock is gonna be in the next Guardians movie because I think they already have the actor to play him.
Is that right? Are we
All
Yeah,
right,
finally gonna see him?
finally.
it's oh my gosh, I'm trying to think of like if I've seen him in any other works at the top of my head. I can't think of any, but the only one I could think of is have you guys ever seen like We're the Millers?
Oh no, I haven't
Mm-mm.
seen one of them.
Yeah, me
But
neither.
like the son, what's his name? The actor. Let me see if I could find it. Will Poulter.
Um,
Oh yeah, yeah, that's right. I heard about that casting announcement. So yeah, yeah, that's right. We will see him.
all right, finally,
I
Finally.
know, right?
finally.
um, but sorry, that was just my little discussion about Adam Warlock. But in terms of Hercules, I didn't care. I mean, I haven't read any Hercules comics. Like, um, most of the comics I read, Hercules is not in it. Like when he was introduced, I was like, oh, I know who he is, but I don't really care. um, yeah, I, yeah, to be honest, like, you know, I feel like post Endgame, like I'm more just like, oh, cool, like seeing more of these characters come to life. But now that I don't know, like the general directions, there should be like this like huge team up, like that, like Endgame was like being like kind of like built up to, I'm just kind of like, I don't really care that much for a lot of these like new introduction of the MCU characters, and I just don't care for Hercules in general. That's just um my take.
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you. I definitely had a don't really care feeling about that scene. um, but yeah, I'm I'm pretty much in that same camp where it's not like I'm a big Hercules in the comics fan. So yeah, it might be interesting to see what they do with this character, if anything, moving forward. But yeah, the cameo is like, yeah, whatever. They did mention his name earlier in the movie, so I guess that was a little teaser. But when we finally get him, it's like, yeah, he
Yeah,
looks kind of corny, and I don't really care. So let's just move on.
yeah.
Yeah.
But this was in a like a post credit scene, but I think like going off like what we've been talking about, like just like other MCU references, there was that whole scene in that room with all the statues and stuff. Like we see like the Watcher and the Celestial being like when Gorg fights Thor and all the kids, which I thought was stupid. um but did you guys, I haven't looked it up yet. I've been meaning to look it up, but did you guys see like a King the Conqueror in that room also?
I didn't.
I did not. Actually, I looked for it the second time because I think you brought it up, but I still couldn't find it.
I need to look it up to see if it was actually in there.
It might have been one of those like blink and you'll miss it type of cameos. Like you have to like literally freeze the frame
Yeah.
because there was a lot of stuff like kind of going on like visually in that scene of like okay, who's that? Where are they? Like who are they? Who's that god?
Yeah.
But I couldn't find Kang when I actually like tried to look.
Got
Let's
it.
see if I could find it right now. But yeah, like it was cool, I guess. Yes, that was what was the second cameo or second post credit scene?
So the second one was Valhalla, right?
Oh, Valhalla, yeah.
We see, we've been giving spoiler alerts, but again, spoiler alert, be aware. Uh, Jane Foster does die in this movie. She dies a warrior's death. And the second post credit scene is her in Valhalla. And it is there where she meets Heimdall, played by Idris Elba. So another past Thor actor who reprises his role here. Um, so kind of interesting, right? Yeah, I think we all talked about how we were curious about what they were going to do with the Jane Foster character in this movie. And I don't think any of us were expecting her to die. Right? If anything, we thought she was going to take the Thor mantle and become a pretty major part of the MCU,
Hmm.
right? But it kind of doesn't seem like it now because she's dead and she's in Valhalla, or also known as heaven, right? So what do you think now? Do you think she's like really dead and we won't see this character anymore? We won't see Natalie Portman in the MCU anymore. Um, this kind of brings us to a bigger discussion about like what's next, but maybe specifically what the Jane Foster. Like, what do you guys think after seeing this scene of her in heaven, essentially?
Hmm. Well, like I would say like they do show like Thor will return like right after
That's
they
right.
show that scene. So it seems to allude to the fact that she would come back. because she is named, she is a Thor once she picks up the hammer. And that they tease Idris Elba, and so I'm thinking that could possibly play into the next movie of Thor going to Valhalla, Thor Odinson going to Valhalla to get in order to bring Jane and Heimdall back or something. Um, to fight Hercules, maybe. I guess that's my prediction from those two after credit scenes of where they might take it. But on the other hand, she could, she's exited the MCU before, so she could have just signed on to do this one movie and just said, "Okay, I just wanted to do this. My character's dead, and I'm done."
Mm-hmm.
um, I think I feel like she'll have a larger role because in the comics, after she is finished with the Thor um mantle, she takes up the Valkyrie mantle and becomes a Valkyrie. So there's still maybe that storyline to explore.
Mm.
Um, so uh, I think we're not done seeing Jane Foster in the MCU.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. Um, Anything's possible with Marvel. No one's really truly dead, especially now in the times of the multiverse. If it's not this Jane Foster, maybe we'll see a different Jane Foster, right? So, like I said, no one's really dead. Yeah, maybe we can open it up a little bit to where does this franchise go in general? Yeah, like maybe we'll start there. At the end of the movie, it does say Thor will return, right? So maybe it means the Chris Hemsworth Thor, maybe it means the Jane Foster Thor or Natalie Portman Thor. Um, I don't know. How did you read that when it says Thor will return?
I was like, no.
Not
That's how
another
I
one of
saw
these.
it. That's how
Please.
I read it. Like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I want to I want to just say like a few like vents to like Thor return. Like one, because we see Gorg's kid kind of like become like the adopted child of Thor
Yep.
for so I'm just like, like the whole like I think Cork said it like how like that's how the name got developed, Thor, Love and Thunder. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, that is so corny. Like you should have seen me. I would like rolled my eyes so hard when he said that and like the title came up and they were fighting. I was like, this is like the corniest, stupidest thing ever. um, but yeah, like if which they probably will, make a Thor 5 with like Hercules, and Thor. I kind of hope Taiki Watiki doesn't come back to do it. like, like I said, he's a genius at what he does, but you need a break, from the same kind of material,
Yeah.
and yeah, I'll just leave it at that because I'm not looking for a Thor 5, but there probably will be like a Thor 5 because it doesn't make sense for them to cross over with any other characters within the MCU. Maybe something like Eternals 2 if that ever gets made, but nothing else because it's already been confirmed that Thor's not gonna appear in Guardians 3.
Oh, is that right?
So, yeah.
Interesting.
So that's where I'm putting my thoughts on.
Yeah, I mean that is interesting. It says Thor will return, and were this earlier in an earlier MCU phase, you could be like, oh, maybe that's in the next Thor movie, but it could be some other movie like the next Avengers movie or some other team up. But right now, when it says Thor will return, it does seem like it means the next Thor movie, right? Because it's like, where would you put him otherwise? I don't know. So that probably would mean another Thor movie. And yeah, who knows what that would be about. Presumably, yeah, Hercules would be in it, but other than that, no idea. But what are your thoughts on this, Christian?
Yeah, I I think that Porfirio does bring up a good point. Maybe it's time to hand Thor over to a different director and bring in some new blood and see what they do. I
Yeah.
think Thor's been a character that's kind of been handed off from director to director.
Mm-hmm.
Um, between his 4 movies as well as where he's been in with the Avengers, and they've all kind of had very different takes on how they view the character. And well, I do think Thor Ragnarok is one of the best Marvel movies. And I think that was a good direction for the character. I it, it I think after watching this, it does feel like that idea has run out of steam a bit, and there
Yeah.
needs to be a bit of a shake up.
Hmm.
So maybe another director could breathe a bit more new life into him. Um, I think remember reading that Patty Jenkins was originally going to direct The Dark World,
Hmm.
but left over creative differences because she wasn't able to make the movie she wanted to make.
I read
So
that. Yeah. Hmm.
Interesting.
she wanted like a Romeo and Juliet type movie with Thor and Jane. So maybe something like that could work for the next one. I don't know, but I think that's ultimately where I'd want it. As far as like where Thor would otherwise appear, I do keep hearing rumors that Secret Wars is going to be the big thing that they're going to build towards next. That's going to be the next big Marvel
Ooh.
crossover. So, of course, I'd want Thor there. I'd want one of the Avengers there.
Yeah.
So I think that would be the next like big crossover for him to be a part
Mm-hmm.
of.
Yeah. Good points. Good points for sure. Yeah. My thoughts on Thor and what's next. I think they need to put Thor on the back burner for a while. I think we're Thored out, you know? I was just thinking that with Endgame, that really brought an end to the Iron Man and Captain America stories. And it probably should have closed out Thor also in retrospect, right? Iron Man got 3 solo movies. Captain America got 3 solo movies. They got to appear in a whole lot of other Marvel movies. And then they had this great send off in Endgame, right? Thor had a great send off too. He handed the keys to Asgard over to Valkyrie. And maybe that would have been a good time for him to just sort of walk off into the sunset. Uh, you know, instead, he boards the Milano with the Guardians of the Galaxy, right? And at the time that seemed promising. I kind of wanted to see more Thor, but like I said, in retrospect, um, wouldn't it have been nice if that was the end of Thor's story, also, right? So yeah, when I see Thor will return, um, yeah, I'm thinking, well, hopefully it'll be a while before he
Mhm.
returns because I think we've all had enough of him for now.
Yeah, I agree. I I think the back burner is the best place for Thor for the next few years.
Yeah. Okay, so we're getting close to wrap up time. Had a couple last thoughts here. Um, we touched upon it, but the music in this movie, curious about your guys' thoughts here. There is a lot of Guns N' Roses songs in this movie, right? Not totally unprecedented, right? Because Thor Ragnarok had a lot of Led Zeppelin, and Iron Man 2 had a lot of AC/DC, right? So this movie kind of follows that precedent in some regards. But yeah, a lot of Guns N' Roses. Was it too much GNR? What do you guys think?
I did have a phase in high school where I was really, really into GNR. And so yeah, it did remind me a lot of Iron Man 2, actually, now that you mentioned it. But it's like, kinda. I don't think it. I think the part where November Rain comes in is great. I really like that part for the big climax. I thought that worked pretty
Mhm.
well with the piano and the guitar solo. Um, some of it, I guess I could take or leave.
What about you, Porfirio? Thoughts on the music?
Mm, I would okay, like I'm not gonna say like I'm gonna give shits on like on the music choices. I think I'm gonna give more shit on uh like just I guess like the purpose of the music. Like just because like you said, Henry, like we've already seen it from like Thor Ragnarok and Iron Man 2. I just kind of felt like this was something like I expected from like James Gunn also, like
Mm-hmm.
he does that a lot in his work. And so I guess like seeing this again, coming off like Peacemaker, I was like, oh, like this kind of like uh the purpose to use like this kind of like old band's music for like epicness or this large energy vibe. I was like, I've seen it before.
Right, kind of been done before. Yeah, I get
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
No, go ahead.
not to shit on the music choice, because I do love Guns N' Roses also, just like the purpose of using the music. That's why I'm like more
Mm,
like uh
got it. Yeah, no, I love GNR too, man. And great songs, definitely. And I'm not gonna shit on it too much either. Uh, I will say this, if the movie was better, I'd probably feel a lot better about it. But I think it's like hearing these great songs in a movie that just doesn't really work kind of bummed me out in a way. Yeah. I was thinking about it and I was like, would I feel better about this music if I was enjoying the movie more? And I think it's a yes on that, right? So, yeah, maybe I'm just kind of indifferent as it is. Okay. Let's go on to our ratings.
wait.
So, oh yeah, what you got for us?
One last thing before we go to readings. I just because I don't know how we avoided this, but what do you guys think of the introduction of oh my gosh, what's that character? The one that Gord goes to for his wish? Um,
Oh, Eternity.
Eternity. Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like, like now we're getting to like a larger scape of like the cosmic MCU. Because like, like I said, we saw the Watcher, possibly King, and we saw the celestial beings within that room and stuff. Like I feel like now we're getting to like this larger, like like multiverse, cosmic kind of level of within the MCU, you know.
Yeah, I can speak on this a little bit. It's kind of what we've been talking about. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is really going into some pretty wild territory, right? Earlier, MCU has been more grounded and more street level, that sort of thing. But yeah, we're getting into some pretty crazy stuff. Multiverse, cosmic Marvel, I mean, this eternity character is basically like the genie in the lamp in a way, right? Grants you wishes. And yeah, in a way, a lot of this is what I was fearing a bit, you know, like I didn't I'm not a big fan of cosmic Marvel and these just grand epic stories. Um, but I always felt like if it was done well, then that's cool, you know. But a lot of this stuff isn't being done all that well. So um, you know, I've stated a lot of my problems about the Eternals movie. This movie has a lot of problems. Um, so yeah, it's almost like proving my point about like, you know, I want to see more street level type stuff, and now I'm not getting it. And not only am I not getting it, but the stuff I am getting isn't working, man. So yeah, it's all kind of a bummer. So yeah, that's kind of my rant
Mhm.
on that.
Mhm.
Yeah, Cosmic Marvel needs the balance, you know, it needs that human connection. Like with Guardians, like Guardians is Cosmic Marvel, but like you kind of you jive with Chris Pratt's story, with Star-Lord's story, and like you like the core team, and like you really like the dynamic of the team, and that's kind of what really drives these movies and kind of what makes them work. And so like I think you need, like you really need something like that, and you need it to like it seems like they do attempt that in the other ones, but it just doesn't seem to click as well, you know.
Mhm.
But when it does, I'm actually all here for it, you know. I have enjoyed some of the forays, like, you know, Guardians, as I said before. I would definitely say like Thanos as well. Definitely
Yeah.
delves into the cosmic. And I
Mhm.
love Avengers Endgame and Infinity War. But yeah, like this one, Eternals, yeah, definitely felt like a little bit more missed because they were just like lacking those like story beats that we were looking for, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Excuse me. And I think like Eternity, uh, unfortunately, I'm not sure if we'll ever see Eternity again. It's an interesting idea, but I think it probably only exists for this movie.
Well, I know
Yeah.
Eternity exists in the Marvel comics, but I just don't know how
Hmm.
often they use it. Like similar to, like the Watcher, like it
Hmm.
exists, but they never have like a large role within like the Marvel universe.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I guess maybe, like you said, it is a genie granting wishes, so maybe it's best to keep that, you know, in the bag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
All right. So from the sounds of it, the three of us are down on this movie. But how down are we? Let's get into our ratings. On a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best, what would you give Thor Love and Thunder? Let's see. Who wants to start? Volunteers?
I'll start. Yeah, I'll give my rating first. So yeah, I'll give Thor: Love and Thunder a 2. I think there's things that I like about this movie, especially kind of certain scenes in a vacuum, certain performances in a vacuum. But the movie feels less than the sum of its parts, is how I would, I guess, summarize it. It feels like there's a lot of structural problems. It feels like a lot of the comedy's lacking, and a lot of scenes are lacking. The movie just doesn't have that oomph. So yeah, 2 out of 5 for me.
Got it. Okay, how about you, Porfirio?
Yeah, so for me, I think I came into the move like zero to low expectations, and thank God I did because I wasn't
There
disappointed. Um
you go.
So, was it a fun movie? Sure. Did it have an Oscar-worthy storyline? Nope. No. Would I watch it again? Maybe when it comes on Disney Plus. So for me, uh, I give this I'm with Christian a 2 out of 5. This was probably my least favorite of the Phase 4 of the MCU films.
Got it. Good take. And yeah, 2s across the board because I'm gonna go with a 2 also. Yeah, I've seen it twice, and neither time did I feel like I was watching a good movie. This is not a good movie. This is a dud. This is a miss. And the more I think about it, the more annoyed I get. And yeah, I was entertaining the thought of going 1 on this, but yeah, I didn't hate it that much. And I didn't hate it at all. I didn't hate this movie. And it just was poorly done. And I will say this. It's a comedy, like we've been saying. And with comedies, comedy is hard. It's very difficult to pull off comedy. Any kind of comedy, stand-up comedy, sketch comedy, comedy in TV shows, comedy in movies, like here. It's not easy. And for me to say, like, Taika, you've been so great in these past projects you've done. Why can't you just bring that same magic? It's not that easy. It's a lot harder than it looks, right? So I will say that. And it wasn't completely void of fun moments. There are some moments worth seeing here. It is not completely without merit. Sure, there are some cool things to check out in this movie. Disappointing? Absolutely. It was a disappointment. So 2 out of 5. And yeah, we're all in agreement. 2 out of 5 for Thor, Love and Thunder. And thankfully, there's going to be some new MCU content real quick. So hopefully we can get um, the bad taste of this one out of our mouths quite soon. Yeah. Okay, with that, we can wrap up the episode. This is farewell from Henry, Porfirio, and Christian.